Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates well, it's not a post game live. It's a live of some sort. It's what I think should be the end of free agency day one. It's currently 2 p.m. my time here in Australia. I've been up since 5 a.m., so I'm quite tired. So just bear with me a little potentially. I'm running on only a couple of hours sleep here, but let's get through it. We'll talk about Kevon Looney's departure from the franchise, the reports surrounding Al Horford and his potential move to the Warriors, and of course, the future of Jonathan Kuminga, which is really no close to a resolution. I'm currently wearing the only JK jersey that I own. It's 10 degrees, so it's not overly warm, but I thought I'm going to wear this until we get a resolution on Jonathan Kuminga one way or another. Whether that's a sign and trade, whether that's him re-signing, I'm just going to rep this JK jersey until we get a resolution. And at this stage, I wouldn't be surprised if I have to wear it for the next 2 months. But we'll wait and see what happens. There seems to be a little bit of an inkling here, I think, that he might be re-signing with Golden State. But who bloody knows? Who seriously knows what's going to go on with Jonathan Kuminga? We'll get into it. I want to start with Loon, though. It's a sad but inevitable day in regard to Kevon Looney and his departure from the Golden State Warriors. Bit of a shock, must be said, that he's heading to the New Orleans Pelicans on a 2-year, $16 million contract. I was assuming and thought that he was going to leave the Warriors. It felt like, to me, this was a Kaminga situation without the drama. And what I mean by that is there hasn't been any fanfare. There hasn't necessarily been too many headlines about it. But Loon just got to a point where the fit between he and the franchise was not there anymore. And with Jimmy Butler coming in and the spacing concerns with Jimmy and Draymond, you need to have a stretch five on the floor, and Loon is obviously not that. And so his role over the last 18 months or so has just become much more limited. Mr. Level, we might be cooked. Empire says, I was hoping you would start streaming again. You guys, let me know what you make of the Warriors' day one of free agency. I mean, we didn't really do anything. Let's be honest. It was Loon departing. Maybe give me your favorite Loon memories from his 10 years with the Warriors. It's quite shocking to me. And as much as I knew this was going to come, again, the fit with the franchise had just become just so problematic that his value lay elsewhere, I think. And his value to the Warriors was just at a point where, as Tim Kawakami pointed out, like, they're not going to match a 2-year, $16 million contract for Loon. I think at the very best, the Warriors would have said, okay, Loon, here's a 1-year minimum contract at like whatever the minimum is, like $3 million. That was probably the best that Loon was going to do. And so I have no issue with him going to the Pelicans. I think it's fantastic for him that he's been able to get another payday at a point that I didn't think he was going to get this kind of deal, like 2 years, 16. Do I love it from a Pelicans perspective? I get the fact that a fairly young team bringing in a veteran presence and a guy that can help a couple of their younger big men. I think that's nice. But in terms of an actual on-court fit, no, I don't get it. I think a lot of the issues that the Warriors run into with Loon are going to be faced by the Pelicans now, and they're going to realize that, hang on, we can't actually play this guy that much when we've got Zion Williamson on the floor, who ideally need to stretch big alongside of him, and they just don't. And they've also got like Yves Messi. They've just drafted Derek Queen. Like, there's not that, like, there's a few centers there along with Loon, and you've got the whole Zion piece to it as well. I don't think it's a great fit for the Pelicans. Now, again, for Looney to get the payday that he has, I think that's absolutely fantastic. So good on him. In terms of my favorite memories, he's had so many big playoff moments for the Warriors going back to 2018 against the Rockets and stuff like that, when he was having to guard Chris Paul and James Harden quite a lot in pick and roll situations and switching out onto the perimeter. Had some big moments in the 2022 playoff run as well. But I think, to me, like, the lasting memory that I'll always remember about Loon is the absolute clinic that he gave Domantas Sabonis in the first round of the 2023 playoffs. Like, we went into that series and Kings fans were almost laughing at the fact that, Kevon Looney was going to be this kind of Domantas Sabonis stopper, and they thought they had this huge advantage at the center position. And Loon not only neutralized Sabonis, but he flat out outplayed him. And the rebounding numbers in that series, I think he had over 100 rebounds in the series, in a 7-game series. It was wild. And he was so big. He was the Warriors' second best player in that series. Undoubtedly Golden State's second best player behind Steph. Steph goes for 50 in game 7. But the under the radar MVP of that series was Kevon Looney. He was so massive to winning that series. Without him, they don't win that matchup with Sacramento. So that's probably my lasting memory, obviously beyond the 3 championships that he's won with the franchise. Just below Loon with a few heartbreaking emojis. David says, never forget when Loon played through broken ribs in the 2019 finals. Mr. Level says, Houston looks like a title threat. Empire says Warriors are going to wait till the last minute against someone they don't want. Mr. Level said the West got a lot better. Yeah, we'll get into some of the external moves here in a second, but the Looney thing, again, it's sad, but it's also understandable. Like, I don't think any of us are hating on the franchise for letting Loon go. Like, I think this is just the reality of the situation where you've got a guy who just doesn't really fit with what the team needs right now. And Slater reported earlier when I woke up at 5 a.m., 3 hours before free agency, that Golden State have identified the need to add a veteran stretch big. And thank God, like, that's what they need to do. And if losing Loon was part of that, then sure, like, they've got Quentin Post and Trace Jackson-Davis under contract for next season. Like, there was no point bringing Loon back as a 4th center. Like, cool, good locker room presence, strong for cultural reasons, but he was not necessarily going to be part of the rotation, or he shouldn't have been, because, again, his offensive limitations, for as good as he's been as a rebounder, as a screen setter, as a savvy passer, playing really. Alrighty, I apologize. For that. I'm not sure if I actually went frozen or not. But in terms of Loon, so No Cap says, what happened? Your Wi-Fi is trippy. I don't know. It's middle of the afternoon. Don't know what happens to me Wi-Fi sometimes. Anyway, Just Below says, do we gain any decent cap space at least? So this is the one thing that I want to keep an eye out with Loon, is the fact that he has obviously got the 2-year, $16 million contract, which is more than I certainly thought he would get. And as a result, is there an opportunity here for a sign and trade to take place? Like we saw with Clay last offseason, where he got a 3-year, $50 million contract with the Mavericks, and the Warriors were able to utilize that into getting Kyle Anderson and Buddy Hield, right? Buddy Hield, certainly a valuable, player for the Warriors this season, and particularly in the playoffs. The Warriors don't get to the second round without a huge performance from Buddy Hield in Game 7 against the Rockets. And then Kyle Anderson wasn't great for the Warriors, barely played really, and was not largely out of the rotation, but had some DMPs and wasn't overly impactful. But they did then parlay his contract along with Andrew Wiggins, obviously, and Dennis Schroeder and Lindy Waters for Jimmy Butler. So that actually, helps you get Jimmy Butler. And so can the Warriors do something here with a potential Looney sign and trade? Again, I'm not necessarily expecting it, but it does give them the opportunity in terms of what Just Below says in terms of cap space. No, they don't generate cap space by this. Their cap space and what they can potentially do and the tools they have at their disposal is still going to be dictated by what they do with Kaminga. The best I think they can do is probably realistically going to be the taxpayer mid-level exception at $5.7 million, which is what they might use for Horford or something like that. So I would just keep an eye on a potential sign and trade. Now, the way that works is it would hard cap the Warriors under the second tax apron, but that's what they did last offseason with Clay. And again, I think it's a worthwhile scenario to explore if there is a player here that the Warriors could look at that is going to make less than $8 million, right? Of course, they've also got the Kyle Anderson trade exception in play as well. But again, that would hard cap them. So that's the biggest frustration from this is that I think we all saw this as inevitable, that Loon would move on. And so, therefore, why didn't the Warriors do this at the midseason deadline where they could have used the expiring contracts of Loon and GP2, which was over $17 million in expiring contracts? Why couldn't they have used that for an upgrade of sorts? Maybe packaged a pick or two, went and got someone of serious value who could potentially help them going into next season, but also, like more importantly, probably could have helped them last season. Like the Warriors make the run, get to the second round of the playoffs, and things, you probably weren't going to get a player that would have made up for Steph doing his hamstring and, losing 4-1 to the Timberwolves in the second round. But maybe you could have got a player that gave them a better chance of winning one of those games against the Timberwolves and therefore allowing Steph to come back for a potential game 6, and who knows what happens. Like that's just a real mistake now. The fact that Loon has left only confirms the fact that was a big mistake, that they did not move Loon or Payton on as expiring contracts mid-season. It's really, really disappointing. So wish Loon the best, an unbelievable career at the Warriors. I think at some point down the track, someday, we'll see him back in a Warrior jersey. I'm actually pretty confident of that. Maybe after this 2-year contract, come back on a vet min or something like that. He's a guy that you want around the locker room. I just saw, a guy as an Australian, I obviously follow the Australians around the league. Joe Ingles getting a minimum contract to return to the Timberwolves, even though he really has no on-court impact. But it's the kind of like 14th, 15th roster spot you can use on a locker room guy. And that's why I wouldn't have been terribly upset if Loon returned, right, on a minimum contract. But again, he's still only 29 years old. He was looking for one more payday. So I'm not against him going to the Pelicans and getting probably $13 million more than what the Warriors may have offered, if the Warriors were offering anything at all. And he was clearly going to be put on the back burner. So he saw the offer from the Pelicans and he thought, look, I'm just going to take this and run because this is far better than what I'm going to get at the Warriors. And I'm not even sure if the Warriors want me because they're probably prioritizing Kaminga and stuff like that. I'm just going to get some of your comments here. Just Boy says Horford has signed already. No, he hasn't. So we saw those reports again a few hours before free agency. Slater mentioned it. Also, Mark Stein and Jake Fisher of the Stein line, NBA insiders, they reported the Warriors' interest in Horford as a top priority or top target in free agency. I've spoken about Horford previously. I've wrote about Horford previously. I haven't spoken about him that much in the last few weeks simply because I didn't think he was that realistic of an option, because I thought even with Tatum's injury and the fact that the Celtics are just kind of shutting it down a little bit, I suppose, in terms of trading Drew Holiday, in terms of trading Kristaps Porzingis, shedding future salary. Even with that, I thought that Horford was probably going to remain in Boston. And you know what? There's still a chance he does. I don't know. I don't know anything about this, obviously, but I think there's probably a 50-50 chance right now in terms of Horford remaining in Boston or heading elsewhere. I don't know. Hopefully it's the Warriors, because I think the Warriors need a veteran center. I'm just going to look. Every time I get a notification on my watch, I'm looking at it. Could be anything from Shams, even this late at night in America. But Horford, I spoke about him previously, and I think he'd be a better option for the Warriors than Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez has obviously now signed a 2-year, $18 million contract with the LA Clippers. That's a shock to me, because I thought Brook Lopez would have wanted to go somewhere where he could still be a strong starter, or playing 25 plus minutes on a playoff contending team. Instead, he leaves Milwaukee, who now have a hole at the center position, for a Clippers team with Ivica Zubac. Like, he's going to be in a backup role. Is he going to play more than 15, 20 minutes a game? That's a surprising move to me. I suppose better the Clippers than the Lakers, maybe. I don't know, because he probably could have had more impact at the Lakers, given that they need a starting center as well. But you've obviously got the Horford situation still hanging up in the air with him and whether he's going to go to the Warriors, stay in Boston. I'm sure Denver, I think, have been linked to him. The Lakers are probably going to be linked to him, given they still need a center. And DeAndre Ayton is the other one. Turbo Turtle mentions here DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton has a lot of critics, and a lot of people do not like DeAndre Ayton. And you know what? I don't like DeAndre Ayton at $35.5 million. I would not want part of that business. But you know what? He's been bought out by the Blazers. He's going to be he's a free agent now. Once he clears waivers, I'll take DeAndre Ayton on $10 million or less. I absolutely would. I know he's got, you look at the fit and you think, geez, with that kind of personality, that kind of concern about his love for basketball and his motivation, would that fit with Jimmy and Draymond in particular, and even Steph? Would that fit? You'd have your question marks, but that guy is too talented not to take the risk on if he's going to be on single figures, like less than $10 million for 1 year. He's only 26 years old. He's a former number one overall pick. He's done it before. 4 years ago, he was the third best player in a Suns team that went to the finals, right? He's averaged a double-double for every year of his career in the first 7 years. So he doesn't particularly space the floor for you right out to the perimeter, but he can hit a mid-range jumper, and he does have far better interior offensive skill than what TJD and Post do. So it's not as if you would be bringing in, yes, again, he doesn't space the floor right out to the three-point line, but at least he has offensive skill. At least he can put the ball in the basket. At least he'll hit an open mid-range jump shot every now and again. So again, is it the perfect fit? No, but I think he's far too talented. And this is what the Lakers would be saying to themselves as well. Is like, he's far too talented. We desperately need a big man. Like, if you can get him at a cheap price, again, no one wants him at $35.5 million. And that's exactly why there was a buyout in the end, because Portland would have scoured the market, looked for a trade, and figured out we can't trade him for anything. So we're just going to buy him out, because obviously we don't want him after drafting young Hansen and obviously Donovan Clingan last year as well. So the Ayton business is very interesting. I'd probably prefer him to Horford just because of the age factor. But I think Horford is also like on the timeline and the fit of Steph and Jimmy and Dre. Obviously, he's 39 years old, right? And I think a couple of you guys have already mentioned that. In fact, I'll get to some of your comments now just in regards to Horford. David says, don't think they can do a sign trade with the Pels because it's got to be 3-year plus deal to sign and trade. That is a good point. That's a very good point. I forgot about that rule. Yeah, so you're right on that. Maybe it can't be a sign and trade. Very good point. Maddie says Al Horford would be underwhelming for me. How much would we pay Al Horford? I'm assuming he would come on the taxpayer mid-level exception at 5.7. If you could get him for less than that, great. But I doubt he'd come here for less. Maddie says 9.6 rebounds. Is that in relation to Horford? Yeah, that's what he kind of averaged last season. I just think he's still like this connective piece that I think would really fit the Warriors well. Like we talked about Brook Lopez as, the ideal floor spacing big man for the Warriors. Well, Al Horford actually took more 3-point attempts and shot a similar percentage to Brook Lopez. So in terms of the ability to stretch the floor, Al Horford is actually better than Brook Lopez, arguably. Now, they're different defensively because Tim Kawakami reposting stuff that's got absolutely nothing to do. The Giants are playing at the moment, cool, but I'm not interested in that. They're different kind of defenders. Al Horford, obviously, I think he's more versatile. I think he'd be better in the Warriors' defensive scheme, just being able to switch a little bit, as opposed to Lopez, who wants to play in drop coverage primarily. So I prefer Horford to Lopez. Obviously, Lopez is not an option anymore. I think Ayton probably trumps them all just because he's younger and because he's still got a little bit of upside, I think, if he goes back to kind of a winning organization. And the Warriors have had a history of being able to rehabilitate the value of some guys here. Maddie says the Warriors don't believe age matters. They'd re-sign Iggy tomorrow if they could. Basquet, the GOAT, says Horford is better than Looney. Going from Looney to Horford would be a big upgrade. Like, it would. I'm not just trying to talk myself into that because Looney's left and Horford is potentially on the way. Like, that's just a flat-out upgrade. Not based on just, like, the players themselves, but based purely more so on what Golden State need. Like, they need a guy who can sit out on the perimeter and shoot 37, 38% from three on high volume. Al Horford does that, right? He's also somewhat capable of attacking a closeout, putting the ball on the floor. He's a pretty savvy passer. He can set screens for Steph, like pick and pop game with Steph. If Kaminga stays, then maybe that helps Kaminga as well, having a veteran stretch five on the floor. Post is obviously still going to be here. Having Horford for him as a veteran guy who he can learn from and try and develop a similar game to. Yes, different body types kind of thing, but I think that helps as well. So I'm a big advocate for Al Horford. And you can go back to like a month ago or whatever when I spoke about this. Like I'm all in on Al Horford. I wrote an article May 21, like 6 weeks ago, basically saying that Al Horford would be a better option than Brook Lopez. And so I like it if it happens. But I'm kind of losing my confidence the further it goes, because when we got the reports 3 hours out from free agency, it was like, okay, this could be really on. And then there was a couple of things early in free agency. You look at the fact Luke Cornett went, and then you look at the fact that the Celtics signed Luka Garza, and you think, okay, they've just signed a center. Does that mean Horford's gone? I think the fact the Warriors let Looney walk so quickly in free agency, again, he was an unrestricted free agent, so they didn't really have a choice. But I think if they'd put some kind of assurance to Looney that they would keep him, then he might have stayed, or at least waited around to see what happens. And so therefore Looney walking makes me think that the Warriors had something lined up. But in saying that, that's like 5 hours ago now and nothing has happened on the Horford front. So we're going to wait and see here. No Cap says we are beyond cooked. They overpaid Jimmy. I look at what Kyrie signed for and Harden and Van Vliet. We definitely overpaid. Should have signed him for 3 years, 40 mil. I'm assuming 3 years, 120. You mean we have so much more flexibility. You've got a point. But I think the option was probably giving him that contract or letting him walk for not letting him walk for nothing, because Brooklyn are the only team with cap space, but probably creating a situation this offseason where what you've got with Kaminga, you would have also had with Jimmy Butler. And at least the Warriors locked themselves into Jimmy Butler and said, okay, this might be an overpay, but we're not going to have the potential free agency scenario go on with what we've got now with Kaminga, which is so much uncertainty, which is a scenario where there's no teams with cap space, so you're trying to have to explore sign and trade scenarios, which are really complicated. And so you also got to remember Jimmy Butler had a player option initially anyway for next season, so he could have easily basically just picked that one up. And so really the Warriors just gave Jimmy Butler an extra year. They gave him an extra year. Now, may it age terribly if he faces some injury concerns or has a little bit of a decline next season? Yeah, sure. But I think we've already seen it pay off in a significant sense, given the Warriors were 25 and 26 at the time of the trade. They turned that around, go 48 and 34, secure the 7th seed, knock out the Rockets in the first round. I think it's worked out pretty well so far. There's a new podcast from Anthony Slater, and I'm assuming Kawakami. And Marcus Thompson. I'm going to have to go listen to that after this. There might be some new information. Maddie says, I feel like I'm being gaslit when people try and sell me on Al Horford. He's 60 years old and hasn't averaged more than 10 points per game in the last 3 seasons. I don't think the Warriors desperately need a scorer. Now, do they desperately need a scorer if Kaminga leaves? Yeah, because he's like theoretically your third scorer, right? So yes. But in that case, like you bring in Horford, Horford's not going to be involved in a Kaminga sign and trade. So that's it's a completely separate transaction. And I think that if there is a Kaminga sign and trade and if he leaves, you are bringing back a guy who can theoretically be a third scorer. What the Warriors need are versatile guys who can do a little bit of everything, who aren't one-way guys. Like, again, I've just complained too much about their roster in recent times has been too heavy on one-way guys, okay? And most importantly, they need a 5 who can stretch the floor. Quentin Post does that. Relying on him going into his second year after some playoff struggles and given his general inexperience and issues on the defensive end of the floor is a huge risk. They need a veteran guy there who they can put with Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green. If it is not a guy who can stretch the floor, there is way, way too many issues in terms of spacing out on the floor, which makes things harder for Jimmy, makes things harder for Steph. And so it's not about Al Horford as such. It's about the type of player Al Horford is, right? That is what it is. It's what he would bring in terms of his skill set. And yes, you can look at the counting numbers and say, oh, he hasn't averaged 10 points for ages. Okay, what I'm more interested in is how many threes is he going to get up each game and whether he can hold up defensively and what he's shooting from 3-point range right? And how he fits with the rest of the veteran guys, which I think would be bloody good. Like I think he'd fit with Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond perfectly. Okay, so I don't. Again, he's 39, yes, but he's still averaging over 25 minutes a game. Like he's fairly ageless. Like he has still been a really, really impactful player for the Celtics over the last few years here. A big part of the success that they've built. Right. So I'm not saying like what's the alternative here? What's the alternative to is Al Horford gonna be what catapults the Warriors into championship contention? Probably not. But you know what? Like, do I think he'd be a very valuable signing who could make them a lot better simply by the type of player he is? Absolutely. All right, I'm going to try and get through more of your comments here, guys, as we get along. That abroad guy says Aiton is not a high IQ player and is a bit of a drama opposite of what GS wants in players. I think that's a point, and that's why the Warriors might steer clear of DeAndre Ayton and let the Lakers have him. Empire says it will be a depressing season if the Warriors get Horford. Look, they're going to have to do something beyond Horford, but I think we're going to wait and see what happens with Kaminga, right? Because that's the main guy that you're going to be able to utilize a potential, sign and trade in and get something of value back, whether that's Kobe White from Chicago, whether that's the Pelicans. So just transitioning onto Kaminga quickly here. So we've got the Bulls, the Heat, the Pelicans, and the Kings, who were reported as the 4 potential suitors for Jonathan Kuminga. I think out of those 4 teams, the team you want to deal with is the Pelicans, without a shadow of a doubt, because they've got the most players you'd be interested in. They're also just making some deals that you're looking around and thinking, really? You're scratching your head, like, what are you doing? Their draft day trade that they gave up their unprotected first-round pick next year, or the most favorable out of theirs in Milwaukee, to move up from 23 to 13, 23 and an unprotected first to get up to 13 with Atlanta to take Derek Queen. That's an awful, awful, awful trade, right? Just absolutely horrific. It's not the worst. It's not the worst picks-based trade I've seen in the last 12 months, mind you. If there's any Australians listening to this and follow the AFL, Richmond and North Melbourne made a trade last season where essentially, just to be very quick on this, North Melbourne gave up what is going to be the 3rd pick this year for pick 27 and probably pick 23 this year. Pick 3 for picks 23 and 27, which is even worse than what the Pelicans did last week. But they're probably the team that you want to deal with because they've got the players and because they're making some head-scratching moves that the Warriors could potentially capitalize on. And so, therefore, you're looking at guys. Trey Murphy would be the absolute dream if the Warriors could somehow give up Kaminga, Moody, and picks for Trey Murphy or something. Herb Jones has been a name that's been floated about in regards to the Warriors the last 24, 48 hours here. He'd certainly be an interesting option. So those 2 are probably the biggest ones at the Pelicans, but again, feel more like a dream scenario than an actual realistic one. And then the Kings, I'm big on Keegan Murray, right? Malik Monk here sounds like he's probably going to head to the Pistons. I'd be big on Keegan Murray. In fact, I'd actually prefer him over Monk just because of the size and the shooting. I think, again, in the front court with Jimmy and Draymond might be a bit more useful to the Warriors. And then if you're dealing with the Bulls, again, Kobe White. I keep saying this Vucevic stuff. I know we need a veteran stretch 5. I know we need it, and I've been talking about it for the last 10 minutes here. But I don't want to do a JK for Vooch trade. If that happens, I might denounce my fandom of the Warriors. That'd be disgusting. All right, getting to more of your comments here. No way we couldn't get Cam Johnson for Moody in a pick, says Mayor Warch. The Cam Johnson, Denver. Denver. And this is the problem for the Warriors. Some of these West teams, like you have, Finney Smith going to the Rockets, and then they're going to get Clint Capella for no other reason, but they can. Like the Rockets are so well set up. They're going to be an absolute force in the West next season, obviously acquiring KD. And then the Nuggets, who have got this new front office, who have come out and just been extraordinary in the first day of free agency. So they trade Michael Porter Jr., who's on a pretty horrific contract, and give up just 1 first-round pick to the Nets for Cam Johnson. And I think Cam Johnson is probably a better player than Michael Porter Jr. at this point. He is on less of a deal than so the Nuggets are shedding salary in this move, getting the better player, and still only giving up one first round pick. I don't understand it from a Brooklyn perspective. I do not understand it. Surely, like before the midseason deadline, they would have got a better deal than this for Cam Johnson. Surely the Warriors were like trying to, give, I don't know, expiring salary and a couple of first round picks to them. And now they're taking on Michael Porter Jr.'s pretty horrific contract and getting one first round pick out of it. Great deal for Denver. And then they go and get Bruce Brown on a freaking minimum. Like, as a Warrior fan, you're just shaking your head thinking that's super frustrating. They get Cam Johnson and they get Bruce Brown on a minimum. I know Bruce Brown's had a couple of bad years, but he was a huge part of their 2023 title team and was so big that he went out and got a 2-year, $45 million contract. Now he returns on a vet minimum to a team that he's accustomed to and he knows how to play with. Man, that is wild. So the Warriors, they could have outbid Denver for Cam Johnson, surely. Now, they wouldn't have, like, you still got to match the salary. So how they would have got that, I don't know, because it had to be more than Moody. Cam Johnson makes what, 20, just above 20, I think this or next season. So I don't know how you would have necessarily got there. Again, a Kaminga sign and trade potential. Last episode I talked about the idea of Kaminga and Moody for like Cam Johnson and Kobe White. That would have been the dream. Obviously, that's gone out the window now with Johnson on the move. So credit to Denver, credit to Houston, and credit to Atlanta as well, I want to say, for their moves over the last week. I think those three teams probably, I think Houston and Atlanta are the two biggest winners of the offseason so far. And then in terms of just today's stuff, Denver certainly a big winner. Dying 1 2 3 4 says Mike Dunleavy's still sleeping. That's why there's no Warrior moves. Oh dear. Cue those jokes. Mayor Walsh says, would you be okay if we kept Kaminga while also getting Al Horford and Melton? Maybe it would be better fit for Kaminga with a stretch big. I would be okay with it. It really comes down, like, I'm sure whatever happens with Kaminga, there'll be like if he does come back, surely there'll be reports of what the Warriors might have turned down in a potential Kaminga sign and trade. Who knows? But I understand the complications with the base year salary or base year compensation rules and stuff like that, which make a sign and trade pretty complicated. And so I'm okay with, like, a lot of fans I see on social media are like begging for Kaminga to go, like are cheering and so up and about that Kaminga is only going to be on the team for another 24 hours or whatever, or cheering that Kaminga is going to be off my team today. I'm not like that. Like, as I said last episode on my Franchi preview podcast, like, I'm a JK fan. I believe he can be a really, really good player in this league. Has he handled this situation terrifically well? Probably not. But I also don't blame a guy for wanting to spread his wings and try and be the best player he can be. Like, I don't blame anyone for that in anything in life. And so the unfortunate reality is, like, he's fit at the Warriors. This isn't great, but it's still such an awkward position where he's still too talented. Like, we saw what he did over the last 4 games against the Timberwolves. He's still too talented to just give him away for nothing. And therefore, again, with the base year compensation complications surrounding this, I'm okay with them bringing him back and basically saying, you know what, we're just going to have to try and make it work in the first couple of months of next season. And it's going to be a massive risk, no doubt. But if you can get a guy like Al Horford in there, maybe that helps him a little bit, because I think the last thing Steve wants to do is bringing Kaminga back and also having Quentin Post as the starting center. Mark Steins just tweeted out, but I don't think that's anything significant. So I think if you can try and surround Mark Stein, I don't care about the Premier League. Like, stop talking about other sports that aren't about the NBA and free agency. I think if you could, you could potentially. Well, actually, no, you couldn't. I'm not sure there'd be enough shooting, closing lineups with Steph, Jimmy, Dre, JK, and Horford. That would be interesting, but I don't know. Like, I still believe in JK to a degree. Do I believe in him at the Warriors? I'm gonna have no choice but to if he resigns. Like, and that's the thing. Like, if you're like, I'm a fan at first and foremost. At the end of the day, if you're on the team I want you to succeed. Like I'm not one of these fans who just desperately wants a guy off the team and is cheering for a guy to be off the team and cheering for guys to fail. Like I'm not. I want you first and foremost. That doesn't mean I won't be critical of your performances. That doesn't mean that I think you're a perfect fit at the team, but I certainly don't want you to fail. If you are a member of the Golden State Warriors, I want you to succeed. Like that's what I think being a fan is first and foremost at the end of the day. Uh, Robert Hill says, not Aiton. Did Pacers sign Miles Turner? No, they haven't. Miles Turner still available. Potential sign and trade in the works there, maybe. Obviously, not a great final series for Miles Turner, must be said. And maybe that's making Indiana rethink their position a little bit, particularly, obviously, given Tyrese went down with that devastating Achilles injury and he's going to be out, and therefore how deep into the tax do the Pacers want to go. It is a little bit strange. Let me read you a tweet, actually. Instead of me saying it, I'll read you a tweet that I read about an hour ago now from Sam Quinn of CBS Sports. Miles Turner, this is what Sam Quinn says. Miles Turner still being out there is odd. They've had him forever and they just nearly won a title. What's up? Are they rethinking their willingness to pay the tax without Halliburton? Are they exploring sign and trades? I felt for a while that Golden State made a lot of sense. So not only Sam Quinn questioning what the hell's going on with Miles Turner, but that last sentence, I've felt for a while that Golden State made a lot of sense. Keep an eye on Miles Turner. Again, I think it's very, very unlikely, but until he signs, it's a possibility. Khan says Horford and Boucher, we need two bigs. I don't think we need two bigs because I think if you've got Post and TJD, and then you've got Draymond's going to still play pretty heavily not heavily, but he's still going to play somewhat as a small ball five. I think that's enough, which is why I thought Looney was always going to go because they needed a veteran stretch big. He's not it. Why would you bring him back as a fourth center? I mean, I wouldn't be totally against it, but I think if you're looking at the Warriors, there's still other holes they need to plug before getting two centers. I think there's, and like Post and TJD, like surely at this point of their careers there, I know TJD regressed a bit in his second year, but surely they're only going forward, right? Surely they're only getting better. Now, again, maybe TJD regressing in year two would say otherwise, but I think we've seen enough from those guys that I'm okay banking on them as rotation guys. Now, maybe TJD's out of it altogether again, but I'm okay with them as rotation pieces. I'm not okay with the Warriors just going into next season with two young centers who still haven't completely proven themselves. Have I gone? All right. We got another half an hour, 40 minutes there before the Wi-Fi played up. I apologize. No Cap says they overpaid Jimmy to have his contract line up with Steph and Draymond. It's cost him now. They're cooked, no flexibility. No Cap says we want Kobe White. We need a JP replacement. Yeah, if you got Kobe White and you got Horford, the thing with me with Kobe White is, here's a question. Would you trade Kaminga for Kobe White? Or would you keep Kaminga and sign Melton to a minimum? Because that's the thing. I know Kobe White would give a boost of scoring that the Warriors need and would be a better fit alongside Steph and Jimmy, given his shooting ability, than Kaminga. But I'm just looking at Melton there. I love Melton. And if you got Kobe White or if you got Malik Monk or some other guard in a Kaminga sign and trade, then you just don't need Melton because you'd have Steph, Pods, Kobe White, let's say, Buddy Hield still. Like you wouldn't need Melton in that scenario. Is there a way of which like Melton can come back here where that's more valuable than like Kobe White? I know that sounds weird, but Shams is just tweeting about LeBron. Still nothing about the Warriors. Yeah, I love Melton that much that I wonder if he's more valuable on a minimum contract than a guy like Kobe White, who you've got to give up Kaminga for, and who is going to need a big payday next offseason in excess of 25 plus million per year. Does Melton therefore make more sense? It was probably the greatest 6-game tenure anyone's ever seen at a franchise. D'Anthony Melton with the Warriors. I was writing about it earlier today. The Warriors went 16-24 in the 40 games immediately after D'Anthony Melton got injured, after going 9-2 in the first 11 games with him. Now, he only played 6 of those first 11 games. He only played 2 of them as a starter. But those 2 games as a starter, 19 points, 10 rebounds in a road win against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then, 14 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists in Clay's homecoming in a big win over the Mavs. A couple of big performances against decent opposition. Like the Mavs had Luka then, like they were decent, just coming off the NBA Finals. The eventual champion Oklahoma City Thunder the game before. I'm going to be pissed when I get the tweet from Shams that says D'Anthony Melton signed a minimum contract with the Lakers. I'm going to be super pissed. Because I think whoever gets him, and if it's on a vet minimum, that's a big signing. That is a big sign. If he can stay healthy, which is a big if. I know it's a big if. I get it. That's the whole reason he could be available on that kind of contract. But I just love that guy. I think, and I know we only saw it for 6 games with the Warriors, but he's just a perfect fit. He's a perfect fit for a lot of teams, including the Warriors, given his ability to be an off-ball catch and shoot threat, but also be a secondary ball handler and playmaker. His ability to be a point of attack defender, which the Warriors kind of need now, particularly if GP2 is going to be on the move as well. Bring him back. Bring D'Anthony Melton back. Empire says, Draymond and Horford on the floor at the same time just seems terrible. Why? I think that would be quite good. Like Horford balances out Draymond's spacing concerns offensively. And I think they've got enough collective IQ. Like the Warriors, after the Butler trade, were the number 1 defense in the league. Why? Like, I know we're talking about, like, we could do with a guy like a shot blocking type, like Lopez. Obviously, again, he's gone to the Clippers. But, a lot of people say, we need a big, shot blocker. Bobby Marks suggesting that we should go after Mitchell Robinson. I don't think we need a rim protect. Our defense is fine to me. Like our defense, I think there's so much collective IQ between Draymond and Steph and Jimmy that this team is going to be an above average defense, right? So long as those guys don't just fall off a cliff dramatically, right? And remain somewhere near their best selves. We saw what Draymond put himself in the decoy conversation, right? The issue with Draymond is that his inability to be respected by opposing defenses on offense means that he handicaps you into having to have, or should be having to have, a stretch 5 next to him. And I also believe it's not viable for him to play as a small ball 5 the entire year. And the Warriors have already come out and said that. So to me, like Al Horford, he's 39. I get it. But I think he'd actually be a perfect front court running mate for Draymond. And as I said in the free agency preview, I don't think you're necessarily asking these guys, like asking Al Horford to come in and play 25 minutes a game. I think it's like 20 minutes a game. Quentin Post can also play like 18 to 20 minutes a game. And then you have 8 to 10 minutes of Draymond as a small ball 5. Right? And then you can maybe work something out where, Draymond's closing a half with as a small ball 5, and you've got Jimmy, and you know what? Maybe Kaminga's part of that as well. Then you got Steph, then you've got insert 5th, probably Pods. We know how much Steve loves Pods, and I like Pods too. So he's probably your 5th guy. I don't know where that's getting you in the Western Conference. It's going to be incredibly tough, but in your means, right? And really the only realistic way the Warriors can get substantially better is a ridiculous, unrealistic Giannis trade, right? That's really the only way. Short of that, it's getting something for Kaminga, whether it's Kaminga actually coming back and improving and being better next season, or it's whatever you get in a sign and trade for Kaminga right now. And then fitting the pieces and just trying to get slightly better through adding an Al Horford, right? We've got to remember, like, the Warriors weren't that far away this season. Post the Jimmy Butler trade, they were one of the best teams in the league. Right. So I think yes, like Houston are making great moves. Denver have made a couple of really good moves today, but I don't think we should rule the Warriors out and just say, well, they're standing pat and therefore they're going to be battling just to make the playoffs next season. Yes, there's some concerns with how good the West is and how good it's going to be next season, but this was one of the best teams in the league following the Butler trade. It's not like they were that far away. I think if Steph doesn't do his hamstring, there's a legitimate chance the Warriors beat the Timberwolves and make the Western Conference Finals. Could they have beaten the Thunder? The Warriors have a pretty good recent record against the Thunder. They seem to match up pretty well with them. Maybe. So I know we're dealing in hypotheticals now, but I don't think the Warriors are that far away. And at the same time, I don't think there's the means for them to get significantly better without a dream Giannis trade. Like, I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens over the next couple of days here. Maybe Mike Dunleavy Jr. is cooking up something. We'll wait and see. Joe Mills says Amir Coffee. Someone bring his name up to me, not in a live stream here, but someone brought his name up to me, I think. Maybe a colleague of mine, I think, at Fansided. And I don't hate it. I don't hate Amir Coffee, but it also doesn't excite me too much. Jay says Horford will essentially play the Otto Porter role. Yep, basically. Ty says Warrior fans too picky thinking they got cap space. True. Says Al Horford moves better than 80% of today's centers. That's the thing. Like, he's still somewhat versatile defensively, right? Which I think is more important than the Warriors getting a slow-footed 7'2" guy who can't switch out onto the perimeter. Mir says PJ Washington would be a beautiful fit. Maybe. Wouldn't thrill me. Depends what the price was. Turbo Turtle says Kaminga for Sabonis. Well, the contracts just wouldn't line up whatsoever. Mir says Kaminga for PJ Washington and bring back Melton. I'm just not a huge PJ Washington guy. I'm not. Like, he's this like prototypical 3-and-D guy, but what does he shoot from 3 for his career? It'd be less than 35%, wouldn't it? Like, he's not actually... He like looks like a good 3-point shooter until you actually look at the numbers. He's 35.8%. It's not spectacular. And last season he was 38.1% with the Mavs. That's reasonable, must be said, this past season. And then the year before, his combined games with Charlotte and Dallas, he was 32%, then 34.8% in 2022-23. Like, he's theoretically a decent shooter, but the numbers actually, like, he's not some lights out guy. He's not a guy that if he's wide open, I'm expecting it to go in. Let's put it that way. Maddie says, I want Sabonis. Just too difficult. Like, he's making more than $40 million. Too difficult. Empire says, I thought the Warriors needed centers that can guard people like Jokic and Zubac more than a center that can shoot threes. Well, ideally both. Ideally. I think someone said, Ty says Al Horford was known as the Embiid stopper. Did we forget? Facts. Not sure he's doing it next year as a 40-year-old or whatever, but I mean, we're asking for a lot. If we want a guy that can, stop Jokic and Zubac and also hit threes, like, you're asking for a lot. The Warriors just don't have the financial capacity to go out. Like, Miles Turner, I suppose, is theoretically the best option in terms of what you want. Guy who can try and match up with the best bigs in the league, has the size for that, but it can also step out and shoot threes. But he's also going to want $25-30 million, and it's going to have to be some kind of sign and trade that is just hard to do, like really, really hard to do, bordering on unrealistic. And so, again, you can't ask for the world when you're using the taxpayer mid-level exception. You can't think you're going to get this perfect guy. Now, I think for $5.7 million, I think Horford would be a really good guy for that number. Joe Head says, go get Russell Westbrook. No, thanks. I'll laugh if the Knicks get Russell Westbrook. Just not a guy I'd be interested in. I like watching Westbrook play because he's so unpredictable and he just does some of the stupidest crap ever. Like, he'll just do 5 good things, and then he'll do 10 terrible things, and it's just it's a comedy watching Russell Westbrook play, but I wouldn't want that on my team. Mr. Level says, Kaminga's still asking for over 30 mil a year. Well, he ain't getting it. Did Chris Haynes say earlier today, I think, that there's a chance, now this would throw a spanner in the works, there's a chance that Kaminga accepts the qualifying offer of 7.9 million? Imagine that. I think that'd be a disaster for the Warriors, because then he just leave for nothing in a year, unless things drastically turned around. I don't know. It'd be a weird. Do you know what would be the absolute worst? The absolute worst outcome would be Kaminga signs the qualifying offer, comes back, actually plays pretty well, and like takes a big step next season, and then he just leaves anyway in unrestricted free agency. Like, that'd be such a night. Like, putting up with 4 years of this uncertainty, getting one good year, and then having him walk. That'd be a disaster. Mr. Level says Atlanta looks like a real threat in the East. Yeah, like, people saying they're a sneaky contender. I don't even think it's sneaky anymore. Like, they're legit good, or they should be. Trae Young, my man, Dyson Daniels, Rissa Shea is the number one. Imagine if they waited a year and got Cooper Flagg. Imagine if Cooper Flagg was in last year's draft and they had Cooper Flagg, and you're adding that to Jalen Johnson. I was about to say Jaren Jackson Jr., Jalen Johnson. Porzingis, obviously, they've just brought in. They've just signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like, man, that's a squad. That is a squad that they've got. Onyeka Okongwu coming off the bench as well. That's a team over in Atlanta. They have done a terrific job this offseason. Matty said Atlanta is going to be very good. Absolutely. Calm down, Bra says, convinced that dudes really don't want to play here for tax reasons, and the system also JK holding up their free agency kind of seems like an FU for the last 3 seasons. Yeah. That's the problem with Kaminga here, is that he still has some kind of leverage in terms of he has to sign the contract, and he's probably looking around and knowing that the Warriors can't really do anything too much until they know what's going on with the Kaminga situation. So it's a tough one. Raymond says JK as a starter. If he comes back, I'm not sure he's going to necessarily be a starter. The kind of money you get, like Naz Reid just got, and granted, Naz Reid's a far more proven player than Jonathan Kuminga, I get it. But Naz Reid got 5 years, 125, and unless they trade one of Randall, who can't be traded now because he just got an extension, or Rudy Gobert, like, he's going to be a 6-man. And so $25 million for a 6-man these days isn't ludicrous, I wouldn't say. The Pelicans are probably about to do that with either DeJounte or Jordan Poole, right? So if Kaminga comes back and it's around that $25 million mark, I don't think a starting role is necessary, but a guy on $25 million has to play 30 minutes. So 30 minutes off the bench, possibly, which is what he was doing in the last. Like, it's crazy to think he did what he did in the last 4 games of the playoffs, averaged nearly 25 points and over 55% shooting. He did that still coming off the bench. Like, he was still coming off the bench in that scenario. So I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens with Jonathan Kuminga. Steve says trade Moody to help update. Otherwise, Warriors are cooked. Well, if you bring Kuminga back, like, is there a way you can still get Kobe White with a Moody and picks for Kobe White trade? That might be my ideal outcome might be like doing Moody and picks for White, keeping Kaminga if you have to, and signing Horford. Maybe. The issue, again, like, once you come down to you kind of probably the Warriors need, and this is why the Amir Coffey thing randomly makes sense, is the Warriors could still do with like a 6'7", 6'8", 3-and-D guy, which Moody is 6'6" or whatever. Like, he's probably the closest thing the Warriors have to it. And so I wouldn't necessarily just be giving Moody away. It would need to be a pretty significant upgrade. Matty says Moody isn't the problem. He's a role player on a cheap contract. He played like trash in the Minnesota series, but his hand was broken. Yeah, it was his wrist, wasn't it? Something like that. So I'm happy to give him, like, I wasn't happy with his performances in the playoffs, but he's a young player. I'm happy to give him some leeway there and welcome him back next season, and hope that as a young player, he can take another step. He's on a 3-year, $37.5 million contract. Pretty team friendly, I would have thought. Was really good across the last 31 games of the season as a starter. So I'm okay with Moses coming back, but again, I wouldn't be against them packaging him with a pick or two to see what they could get. But again, like he's at that mark where how many guys at $11-12 million would be worth giving up Moody in a pick for, maybe Kobe White. Again, that's probably the main one. Any guy that's on a rookie deal still, like Keegan Murray. Would you do Moody in a pick for Keegan Murray? I'm not sure why the Kings would do that, but maybe. Raymond says, and that is why they have to address the second scorer. Nobody can score without Steph. Well, Jimmy Butler can score, or at least Jimmy Butler can create, and therefore the Warriors need play finishers, right? They need guys who, if Jimmy kicks the ball out to you in the corner, can you stick a three? And the Warriors just didn't have enough of those guys, I think. Like, Jimmy's kicking the ball out and it's Kaminga or it's GP2, or the spacing is completely stuffed up because Looney or TJD are on the floor. Moody's shot fell off a cliff in the playoffs. So did Posts. So did Pods. So you just need a more proven shooter. Maybe PJ Washington is that, as someone mentioned before. I'm not sure it exactly is. Weirdly enough, Clay almost makes more sense on the Warriors now again than he does in the Mavs. Like, I'm looking at Clay on the Mavs, I'm thinking, is he getting shots? is anyone getting him shots? Because they've just got D'Angelo Russell, who's more of a score-first guy. Poor old Clay's gone from playing with Steph his whole career to signing with a team with Kyrie and Luka to now next season entering his new starting backcourt teammate is D'Angelo Russell. Bit of a downgrade for old Clay, but anyway, good luck to him. No Cap says Dallas wasn't healthy last season, nor were the Spurs. Warriors are a 10 seed easily now. Clippers, Lakers, Houston, Denver, OKC, even Pelicans are all better than Golden State. Golden State, oldest team with worst bench depth in the league. I'm not. You can make arguments for all those teams except the Pelicans. I'm not taking that the Pelicans are better. I need to see the Pelicans actually be healthy for starters. I need Zion to play more than 20 games a season for starters. There's no way you can sit here today and say you can make the argument for it talent-wise. But there's no way you can categorically say that the Pelicans are better than the Warriors. Right. And I think you say the same about a few of those teams. Like, I don't think the Warriors are that far away necessarily. Maybe I'm a little bit optimistic than some of you guys are after day one of free agency where no moves were made. Obed says, it's funny how the Warriors don't value JK but won't trade him either. I was saying Brooklyn would prefer JK and a pick over what they got for CJ. Crazy. Tyler says, we'll get Al Horford and Vucevic will have the oldest starting five in NBA history. I need the Warriors to sign Al Horford ASAP just so we can get rid of the ridiculous JK for Vucevic trade idea. Because again, if that goes down, I do not want to see that whatsoever. So I just want to see the Horford signature straight up. I need it. No Cap says Knicks don't need Westbrook now. They got Clarkson. Good point. Yeah. Jordan Clarkson goes to the Knicks after being bought out by the Jazz. I think the Kings are interested in Westbrook as well. The Kings are hilarious, man. They are dead set hilarious. Is it any coincidence that, I don't know, some of these teams that are interested in JK are just like most poorly run teams in the league, like the Kings, the Pels to a degree, the Bulls. Like, it actually gives me some optimism that the Warriors could get Kobe White or could get Keegan Murray or could get Herb Jones, right? Like, it's weird. Raymond says, is LeBron available? Did you see, was it Yossi Goslin or whatever on his podcast suggested that the Warriors and Lakers could get in on the Suns Rockets KD trade, where essentially it would be like KD obviously going to Houston, LeBron going to the Warriors, Jimmy Butler going to Phoenix, and Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks going to the Lakers instead of the Suns. And it weirdly made some sense. Now, Jimmy can't be traded until August 6th. And I really like Jimmy. But, and I emphasize but because I know a lot of you will probably be frustrated and angry with what I'm about to say. If the Warriors could flip Jimmy Butler for LeBron James, I'm doing it in a heartbeat. I like LeBron James. I know Jimmy was great for the Warriors, but LeBron is still a better player than Jimmy Butler, right? Even though he's 5 years older, just opted into his player option. Obviously, a bit of speculation going around LeBron the last 24, 36 hours. I don't think anything will happen. I think this is the annual LeBron stuff that goes on at this time of the year when he wants the Lakers to make moves. I think that's nothing more than that. But if there was the opportunity to flip Jimmy Butler for LeBron James, I think I'm doing it. Particularly when it might actually be a good thing that LeBron's on an expiring contract rather than, as No Cap has been complaining about Jimmy Butler being overpaid. Well, you could send out Butler's 2 years remaining and get LeBron on expiring. Robert says Russell will be a good fit if he has Steph Curry as a shooter. Russell will be a good fit, bro. No, he will not. Russell Westbrook, no. I don't want any interest in. I don't have any interest in Russell Westbrook. Please. Empire says, can the Warriors still sign players from their summer league team? I want them to sign Blake Hinson. Yeah, well, those guys will be pushing for a training camp deal, absolutely, and then potential two ways, and we'll see what happens with the main roster. I'm a Blake Hinson guy. Yep, he's that 6'7" guy who can really shoot the ball that I just spoke about before, in terms of a potential player that the Warriors need. So I don't hate Blake Hinson as an option, but again, you'd most likely think that's on a two-way deal. There's just too many guys. Like when you think about Taron Armstrong's been given a two-way qualifying offer. When you think about Will Richard and Alex Tui, at least one of those, if not both, will be on a two-way contract, you'd imagine. So there's a lot of guys pushing for spots towards the back end of the roster and on two-way deals. One thing on Summer League, I'm incredibly disappointed Post isn't playing. Like, you've got to fight. Like, I get it. Okay, you can do specific drills. Like, you can get in the weight room and put some muscle on. Great, cool. You have a finite opportunity to try and work on your skills and what you need to improve on actually in an in-game environment, right? You've still got the entire offseason and training camp where you can work on specific things in drills, or again, you can get in the weight room and get stronger. This is a couple of week period in Summer League that you could have actually came out and showed us that you are too good for this Summer League level for starters. And I'm not saying you have to play the entirety of Summer League, but play some of it and actually show me some of what you can do in terms of defense and rebounding. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a Post thing. It's probably the Warriors. Like they're the ones that have decided this. But it's taken a big chunk of interest out of Summer League for me. I'm still going to watch every game. I'm still going to be fascinated. As an Australian, man, we've got 3 Australians. We've got 3 Australians in this in the Warriors Summer League team. Taron Armstrong, obviously, who I'm super interested in. Finished the season on a 2-way contract. Impressed in Santa Cruz. Alex Tui just drafted 52nd overall. And Alex Higgins-Titcher, who I don't know too much about as well, but he's on the Summer League squad as well. Raymond says Atlanta always looks good on paper. Somehow it never works. Yeah, it's a little bit like the Pels, I suppose, because the Pels don't look too bad on paper either. But yeah, you're kind of right there. I'm not sure how far Trae Young can ultimately take you. Took them to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021 or whatever, but yeah, ultimately, is he going to be the best player in a championship team? Probably not. So there might be some limitations there. Robert says we need DeAndre Ayton. He's the best fit too. I'm not against Ayton. I'm not against him. What I will say is that the Warriors need to get one of Ayton or Horford. Because if they don't get one of those two guys, then yes, we are cooked. We are cooked in that scenario, because I'm looking at the other center options and I'm like people are mentioning Chris Boucher, and I'm like, Chris Boucher, Warrior legend Chris Boucher, played one game in 2017-18. Warrior champion Chris Boucher. Do I want him coming in as a potential starting center on a hopefully championship or at least strongly playoff contending team? No thanks. No offense to Chris Boucher. Do not want him. And I'm looking at the other options beyond Horford and DeAndre Ayton and Turner, I suppose you're going to throw in there while he's still theoretically available. There ain't too many options in terms of free agents. Raymond says you might lose Pods. I tell you what, if you traded for Kobe White and then you sign Melton, then one of Hield or Pods probably have to go. Just putting that out there. Tyler says Moody had 2 surgeries. I think no, Pods had 2 surgeries, didn't he? Moody had 1 surgery, Pods had 2. Pods had wrist. I think Pods and Moody both had wrist surgery or something, and Pods had his ab surgery, core surgery, whatever it was. Enrod says they'll still have Kaminga bird rights, so they won't lose him if they want to keep him. That's not true. If he accepts the qualifying offer, then he becomes an unrestricted free agent. They'd have his bird rights, I'm assuming, so they could pay him. I'm not exactly sure how it goes with bird rights, but in terms of restricted versus unrestricted, if he accepts the qualifying offer, then he's an unrestricted free agent next offseason, and then he could just leave without the Warriors doing a damn thing about it, which is obviously not the case this time around. Because if Kaminga was unrestricted free agent right now, that would have been the first deal that went down. That would have been 901. Kaminga going somewhere, just saying, get me off the Warriors, get me away from Steve Kerr. That would have been the very first deal that went down. I guarantee you, if Kaminga was an unrestricted free agent. But fortunately, he's restricted. The Warriors have some leverage in this, and they knew that once they didn't sign into an extension in October. Empire says, I think trading Moody would be bad. We need his defense, especially since GP2 is most likely leaving. Right now, Moody's the only Warrior who can defend the top guards like Jar and Ant. Yeah, I think he was important over the second half of the season. He kind of took over that Wiggins role. And again, I wouldn't be against trading him, but they need to get someone pretty decent and fill a big hole. And then even then it might leave them a hole. Like you can't get rid of Kaminga and Moody and not bring in like a 6'7", 6'8" athletic type who can shoot a little bit. Like, and so I'd propose that trade Kaminga and Moody for Cam Johnson and Kobe White, or Kaminga, Moody, and a pick for Cam Johnson and Kobe White. Or in that scenario, you bring in Cam Johnson, 6'8" shooter, right? That's fine. But you can't get rid of both of Kaminga and Moody and not get some kind of wing forward type back who's 6'7", 6'8". Z says people underestimate the IQ requirement to play within the Warrior system. It's why B Elites and Otto Porter worked. Al Horford is that type of player. Great point. Absolutely. For sure. Then next says Mavs bench is good. It's better than most starting fives. They're looking. I'm not sure D'Lo's the answer while Kyrie's out. I'm not sure he's additive to them. I think in some ways he might be a detriment in terms of potentially hunting shots rather than the ball going to AD or Cooper Flag. And I'm not sure how Clay works, like who's setting him up for catch and shoot threes and whatnot. But yes, when Kyrie returns, I like the Mavericks they're just fallen into complete gold, like just absolute lottery luck. That's what it is. Like they get Cooper Flag, it just changes the trajectory of their franchise. Ace Z says, nah, Steph needs to have more rings than Bron. Good point. No Cap says Malik Monk is on his way to Detroit for Schroeder, so that takes the Kings out of the mix for JK. Not necessarily. Now, would Malik Monk have been an option for the Warriors? Yeah, possibly. But would you do Jonas Valanciunas and Keegan Murray for JK? Yeah, maybe. I'm not thrilled over Valanciunas. I'm just saying him because of the salary standpoint. You might need him included to kind of make it work. But Valanciunas and like Keegan Murray, like would you just do Keegan Murray for Kaminga straight up? Yeah, probably because he just fits better around Steph and Jimmy. That might actually be. I keep trying to think my ideal outcomes here. What would you think if you said, let's trade Kaminga for Keegan? You signed Horford and you signed Melton. That's your moves. And then you're left with Steph Pods, Jimmy, Draymond, Keegan, Horford post, Moody, Melton. That's 9. That's 9 pretty solid players. That's a decent top 9, I reckon. Don't mind it. Ace says, what are the Warriors doing? Everyone making moves and the Warriors ain't doing nothing. We've been asleep, and while we've been asleep, Loon's walked out the door on a 2-year, $16 million contract. Douglas says WTF Post isn't playing Summer League week. It's disappointing. I'm not going to, again, I don't know the details of why he isn't playing Summer League and whose decision that ultimately is. If it's his decision and he's choosing not to play Summer League, yeah, I'm pissed off. Bloody Pods and TJD played Summer League last year after better rookie seasons than Quinton Post had this past season. Right, the fact Pods came back and played Summer League was exceptional, really, after he was all rookie first team. So if those guys can do it, Post can do it. So if it's his decision and he's choosing not to, I'm disappointed. But I think it's probably more so in line with the Warriors deciding to make that move as well with him and thinking that specific drills and just off-season training and getting in the weight room might be better for him. I don't know. No Cap says, what about Trey Lyles? I don't hate him, but he's not as what? Just an addition? Like, as long as you get he's not a starting center. Like, again, I think if the Warriors don't get Horford or Ayton and they end up with Trey Lyles, like, that's an absolute nightmare. Like, the Warriors need a veteran stretch big. He's not. He's like a forward type. Again, if you're just adding him, I suppose, and he's not, you're not asking him to play as a small ball five or anything like that, then yeah, that's fine. Trey Lyles would be fine. It's not going to thrill me. I'm not going to be doing cartwheels about it, but it's fine. If you're signing him on a minimum and he's a back end of the bench, like somewhere between the 9th and 13th guy on your team, sure. Davus says Mo Wagner. Well, he is a free agent now. Surely he's staying with the Magic. Surely. Has to be. GSW says, any updates with the Warriors? The latest would suggest that Al Horford the chance to come. Loon is obviously officially gone. GP2, I think will probably follow Loon out the door, but I wouldn't say that's an absolute lock. There's a chance that he comes back. Kaminga, the Kaminga stuff to me seems to change very quickly in either direction. Like, I think before free agency started, I was certainly of the belief that this guy's gone. They're going to work out some kind of sign and trade. Now, based on, what was it? I think it was Mark Spears on ESPN, I think, said that the Warriors are hopeful to re-sign Kaminga. And so, therefore, that tells me there's probably a chance he comes back now. Like, maybe it's 60-40 he comes back. When earlier in the day, when I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning, I thought it was probably 20-80 that he was out the door. Or 20% chance he was staying, 80% chance out the door. Douglas Mike says Larry Nance Jr. Again, he's in that Trey Lyles basket where I don't hate it, but he's not a starting center by any means. And so he's like a small ball option. If he's in addition to Horford or Ayton, fine. That's okay. On a minimum contract order. That's okay. But he shouldn't be like the first guy you sign, that's for sure. Douglas Mikes also says some Warrior fans are entitled. They think we should be able to get Jaren Jackson Jr. for Kaminga Hield and a bag of Funyuns. If we can get Horford with the TPMLE, we should be relieved. Yeah. Well, Jaren Jackson Jr. sounds like he's renegotiating and extending a big new 5-year, $240 million contract with the Grizzlies. So that's officially out the door. GSW says, go get Wiggs with JK. Got to be Moody as well. And then at that point, I'm not thrilled about giving Kaminga and Moody for Wiggins. If you want to get Wiggins for Kaminga, sign Kaminga to basically the exact same contract and wait till he's trade eligible. Then make the move in December when he's trade eligible, essentially. You just shouldn't be doing it now when it means you've got to give up Moody in the process. Mike says it feels pretty unlikely Horford goes to GSW given all the room Denver and the Lakers opened up tonight. There's a real chance he either makes more than TPMLE or he goes back to Boston. Yeah, the longer it goes where he doesn't sign with the Warriors, because there were some reports that it was pretty imminent, like leading into or as soon as free agency open, it's like, okay, we could see something in the next couple of hours. The longer it goes, the worse I feel about it. In saying that, remember when Saric took ages to sign a couple of years ago? And that was a similar situation where they were strongly linked to Saric. And then it took like days and days. I was like, well, the further this goes, the more I just don't think it's going to happen. And then he eventually did. And I was actually so up and about for that signing, and then it didn't really work out too well. Z says, I highly doubt it's post decision not to play. They're probably doing more focused workout sorry. They're probably doing more focused workouts with him. Yeah, I agree. No Cap says, seems the Bills are waiting for the Warriors to see what they do with Kaminga because they haven't extended Giddy or Kobe. Oh, the Bulls. The Bulls are waiting for the Warriors to see what they do with Kaminga because they haven't extended Giddy or Kobe. Yeah. Still a chance for a trade. I think they're going to, I don't think the Kaminga situation would necessarily hold up Giddy. I'm surprised that actually hasn't been announced. Z says, would a double big lineup with Post and Horford work? Yeah, potentially. Celtics ran plenty of that with Horford and Porzingis. Yeah, sure. I that intrigues me, actually. That genuinely intrigues me. Defensively, maybe some concerns, but it's like some of this stuff in the regular season, like you can't be perfect. You can't say, oh, this guy doesn't work in the playoffs and therefore I don't want him. Again, when you're talking about guys that are making little money, some of this stuff is like, can he eat up some significant minutes in the regular season and be productive and helpful? Okay, if he ticks that box, it's almost enough. Right. And Mike says, yeah, the Celtics ran a ton of double big with Horford last year. Yeah. Post is awful defensively, though. Anyway, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes, guys. I'm going to finish it up here. I'll probably come back this time tomorrow, maybe, and do another one, potentially. Obviously, if we get some news in the meantime, surely between now and this time tomorrow, 24 hours time, the Warriors do something. Yeah, we'll wait and see. Just reading some more comments from you guys here. Thank you very much to those of you that have tuned in. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. I'll throw this replay up as well for those of you to watch afterwards, and I'll throw it up on the podcast feeds as well for you guys. So if you are tuning in afterwards, thank you very much for your ongoing support. I'll probably be back this time tomorrow. Let's say 2:00 again, my time. So 9 p.m. Pacific time for those of you in the Bay Area or whatever. We'll come back. We'll talk more about what the Warriors could do, what the Warriors have done. Let's hope the Warriors do something between now and this time tomorrow. Once again, thank you very much, guys, and hope to see you again in 24 hours' time.